So the theme that we are going to continue is what does it mean to be free? A small question, right? It's this question that's really right at the heart of the whole Buddhist project. This is the kind of clarion call of what the Buddha's teachings offer, is this possibility of freedom. And freedom not as a kind of escape from what I talked about last week as we call the Saha world, S-A-H-A, the human world, the human realm, which is understood as the realm of suffering. The word Saha means to be endured. And the Saha world, by understanding that this is a world of suffering, the world of samsara, the world of birth and death, we I was going to say we can stop complaining so much. No, we recognize that this is how it is, and the key is that we can stop looking for someone to blame. Right? Why is there all this suffering? Who's to blame? Is it me? What am I doing wrong? Or is there somebody else who I can accuse in some way? And it's not that there isn't plenty of bad behavior, our own and others going on. There is. And it's not that we shouldn't find wholehearted responses to the enormous degree of division and violence and suffering that we see and feel and hear, in us and all around us. But where do we act from? And this question, what does it mean to be free, is really central to that. Are we acting from a place of reactivity, of kind of karmic habit? Or are we acting from a place of intentionality and clarity and kindness? I used this quote last week. I'll read again from Albert Einstein, who said, "We can't solve our problems with the same mind that created them." In other words, the mind of division, the mind of separation, that's the mind that creates the problems that we have. That mind that separates, that creates a me and a you and an us and a them. That's where the trouble begins. And if we are responding to those troubles with that same mind, we don't actually solve any problems. We actually just make things worse. We stir the pot, as it were. He says, we can't solve our problems with the same mind that created them. We have to learn to think in a new way. And this gives us a big hint about what it means to be free. And last week, I talked quite a bit about freedom as, in a nutshell, kind of the ability to choose a response rather than just react in this knee-jerk, reactive way, habitual way that I was describing. And I gave examples of people throughout history who have responded in kind of extraordinary ways under serious difficulty that can point us in the direction of what's possible. I talked about Viktor Frankl. I talked about Nelson Mandela, and this more recent kind of popularized story of Amanda Knox, who was a young woman who was falsely accused of murder and spent many years in jail in Italy, and ultimately came to forgive her prosecutor, the person who landed her in jail. And so these stories point us toward the other part of what's true about the Saha world. It is a world of suffering, of injustice, where terrible things happen to innocent people. And it's also the world where it's possible to learn and grow and ultimately to be liberated, to really learn to cut that karmic chain. In the Zen tradition, we have this ceremony, the full moon ceremony, which was done predates Buddhism actually, in which there's this coming together and a chanting of all my ancient twisted karma from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, born through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. The way that we cut that karmic chain isn't by pretending to be good, it's by paying attention to all of the ways that we are reactive, all of the ways that we don't behave in ways that are aligned with what we care about, but we behave in ways that are conditioned. That would be the Buddhist language for it, that are rooted in our ancient twisted karma. So the Saha world is a world that includes all of that ancient twisted karma, but it also includes the possibility of being liberated from it, of being able to say enough, right? This is what Frankl did. This is what Mandela did. This is what Amanda Knox did. Said, even though I have been treated in these ways, I'm not going to continue that. I'm not going to act in those ways myself going forward. It's a very powerful act and inspiring act. And last week I talked about this ability to choose from the really from the perspective of this simple way of talking about responding instead of reacting. And I walked through the teachings of the Satipatthana Sutta. These are the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which are the foundation, I want to say the girding, the undercurrent of all of the meditative practice in the insight meditation tradition that we teach, in which with each foundation, we're having a shift in our relationship to whatever foundation is being pointed to. So the first foundation is the body and breath. The second foundation is what's called Vedana, pleasant and unpleasant experience, simply put. The third are what we call mental states, which in Buddhist teaching is both our thoughts and our feelings. And finally, dhammas, which I'll say more about in a moment. So what does it mean to shift our relationship to, as Einstein said, to think in a new way? Thinking is not just with the mind, but in a Buddhist context, it's actually more about how do we engage, how do we respond to our familiar experience in a way that isn't habitual, in a way that is free. So we begin with the body, which we usually have an idea about. And in our meditative practice, we come into the body as a living entity. We shift our relationship to the body, right? So it's not, I talked about last time, something we just lug around, but it's actually its own source of aliveness, of information, of wisdom. And we begin to pay attention to our fundamental reactivity that comes with the second foundation of mindfulness, which is Vedana. At each moment of experience, sight, sound, smells, taste, touch, thoughts, emotions have a valence of flavor, of pleasant or unpleasant. And if we start to pay attention, what we notice is that a huge part of our life, we're just reaching after what's pleasant and trying to hang on to it, chase after it, grab it, hold it. Or on the flip side, we're trying to push away what's unpleasant, what we don't like, what we disagree with, what's uncomfortable, what's unpleasant. So we're in this constant state of reverb. And our meditative practice begins to show us that we will continue to have pleasant and unpleasant experience. Liberation doesn't mean we're free of that. What it means is that we don't have to react. We can have an unpleasant experience and we don't have to pile on. You know, we know this in meditation. When we have a physical pain, we can tighten around it or not, right? When we have a mental pain, when we have a difficult thought, we can just have a difficult thought, or we can say, I believe this thought, or why am I having a feeling? Let's say, why am I having this feeling? Why is it happening to me? We can add and add and add and add. So again, we're shifting. This is what I'm expanding on what I think Einstein means by a new way of thinking, by saying we're shifting our relationship to our fundamental experience. And these four foundations are pointing to four dimensions of our fundamental experience: our body and breath, our reactivity to pleasant and unpleasant, and then to all of the mental, we call mental states, all of our thoughts and feelings. Most of us aren't aware of our thoughts and feelings, are we? We're just caught in them. We're caught in the flow, the river, that rush of. I think I said last time that there's a wonderful way of talking about the moment by moment, there is an illusion of, I'm thinking this and it must be true. The illusion of truth, the illusion is what's arising. The belief that it's true is delusion. And delusion is actually what drives our grasping and pushing away, grasping and pushing away. Because at the heart of delusion is the belief that we're separate. And because we believe that we're separate, therefore we need to reach out and get what we want or try to push away what we don't want. So as we begin to work with our thoughts and feelings, we begin to have a taste of freedom because we recognize I'm not what I think. And even, at least for me, when I start to really pay attention to my thoughts, like, who came up with this stuff? Right? I mean, really, most of what goes through my mind is like really not very interesting. Kind of like some of it's not even true. Like my mind goes blah 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 about something, and if I'm really paying attention, sometimes I think, wait a minute, I don't think that. I don't believe that, but it has its own, right? So we start to catch on to that. And as we unhook, right, as we don't get swept away, we have a little bit of space. That's where the freedom comes. And finally, the fourth foundation, which is called dhammas. And dhammas are the way it's laid out in the four foundations of mindfulness is all these lists of Buddhist teachings. And for me, I think of from a practical perspective of meditation that when we're talking about dhammas, we're talking about patterns of reality, like the truth of impermanence, say. That's one of the things that's on the list, right? Or the truth of non-separation, or like that. So those truths we can begin to recognize externally, but we can also begin to recognize our own internal patterning, right? And this is what I was referring to earlier as all my ancient twisted karma. We begin to see our own patterns of behavior and to not have to just go with them, right? Some of them might be okay to go with, but we have a choice. That's the key. And that fourth one for me is really where a lot of potential liberation comes. When we start to see our fundamental beliefs and assumptions and patterns about how we think we are and the world is. And we say, really? Is that true? And now we have the possibility of freedom, of engaging in a different way. So that, all of that is kind of recap. And it's all of that, which I just walked through from a Buddhist Four Foundations standpoint, is described in a simple way by Frankl, Viktor Frankl, who says, between stimulus and response. Stimulus is every moment, all of our sensory equipment, our eyes, our ears, our nose, our tongue, our mind, our touch is getting stimulation. We're seeing colors, we're hearing sounds, we're tasting, we're smelling, etc. Between stimulation, what we see and hear and think and smell and taste and touch, and response, there's a space. Mindfulness practice is about expanding that space. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And then he says, in that space lies our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So this is a very beautiful and powerful way to talk about how our basic mindfulness practice supports us in being free. And why is this important? Because if we aren't responding, if we are only reacting, then we are not helping the suffering of the Saha world get reduced. We're just adding flame to the fire, even if we're super well intended. If it's just reactivity, it's usually not very skillful. It doesn't have that quality of freedom in which we're aligned with, what do I care about? What matters to me? How do I want to show up like that? So I think for many of us, this is obvious theoretically, even if you haven't experienced it in a direct way. And many, many people, even if you're new to meditative practice, know the difference between, like it's like the difference between you're sitting in a meeting and someone says something and you get angry. What's the difference between noticing that you're angry and bang, snapping at someone? Big difference, right? So that little moment of noticing gives you a choice. And in that choice, there's freedom. And in that freedom, there's a possibility of responding to suffering, your own suffering, the world's suffering, in all kinds of ways that aren't just stirring the pot, that are potentially more helpful, more useful, more skillful. So when you hear yourself, when I hear myself asking, what should I do? From this perspective, it's not that we don't want to respond, but we want to look at where we're responding from to see, is there a space? Is there a true response, or is this just a knee-jerk reaction to what's happening? Because that reactivity is the source. Oop, I just raised my hand. Is the source of all the surus, the Yiddish word for trouble, all the difficulty. It's the seed of it. So if we're just doing more, even if we think we're right, we're basically just adding more trouble to trouble. Right? So this is one whole dimension of freedom. And what I want to talk about tonight is a whole nother level of freedom. And this is going to take us into a dimension that will stretch the mind. So I'm going to say this a few times, I hope, as I speak, but um, most of what I just said, our usual linear cognitive mind can kind of track and go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But here's the context. In any moment of experience, there are three things happening. There's awareness, there's the content of what we're aware of, right? The four foundations of mindfulness are four different categories of content that we can pay attention to. And as we pay attention to each one, there's different kinds of insight that arise, right? So there is awareness, there's what we're aware of, and then pretty much my whole talk last week was about how do we shift our relationship between those two things. So the focus last week was on the content and the shifting of the relationship to the content. Very powerful, right? Most people are running around trying to change their content. This is not a bad thing to do, right? If you have difficult circumstances in your life and you can do something about it, if you see painful things happening in the world and you can do something about it, please do. But all of us will bump up against a point when there's difficult content and we can't change the content. For example, we're all getting older. I see this now. I walk my dog who's now 11. Yeah. So 11 is 77 in dog years, and he kind of gimps along now. You know, he's quite slow. I used to like speed walk around Golden Gate Park, 5, 6 miles a day in the park. It was great. And now I'm lucky if, we can get to the end of the block and back, right? So some content, this is the Buddha's inspiration for walking the path, old age, sickness, and death. We're not going to get around these, right? So then we change our relationship to the content, right? What I want to talk about tonight is shifting from the content and the relationship to the content to awareness itself. This is not an easy thing to talk about. And as I said, the thinking mind may have some difficulty as we begin to enter this territory because it's like sometimes we say it's like trying to look at your eye with your eye. How can you be aware of awareness? It's sort of a hall of mirrors. And I'm going to give it a try. So, in the meditation this evening, I was using the metaphor of a sky like mind that has clouds moving through it. So, just for a moment, I invite you to just close your eyes and see if you can imagine clouds moving through the sky. And now, keeping your eyes closed, shift your perspective. And instead of paying attention to the clouds, notice the sky. And it may be subtle, but you may notice a shift within you. And now open your eyes. We'll do a similar little practice. So pick an object, something. I'm looking at this bell here on my desk. Pick something to look at in your room, wherever you're seated, or your car, wherever you may be. And look at the object and notice what that's like. And then shift your awareness to notice the space. It's a very subtle shift, but if you practice it, you will begin to notice a visceral, sort of felt sense of a shift. One is sort of more focused, and the other is more open and spacious. This is a direct experience way of pointing to what it is I'm going to try to talk about, which is the difference between content and awareness. Hmm? Awareness is like the sky, and it is sometimes in Buddhist teaching referred to as that which knows. Most of the time, we're paying attention to what we know, what is known. I know a thought, I know a feeling, I know a person, I know an object. We're paying attention to the content of what we're aware of. Very rarely do we kind of turn our attention to notice the awareness itself. Now, there's good reason for this, because what is it? What is awareness? It's very subtle. It is, in Zen we say, even the 10,000 sages don't know. What is it? It's a great mystery, right? And here in America, we live in a culture in which we live in a scientific paradigm in which basically only those things that can be counted and measured count, right? So we have all this research, on mindfulness and neuroscience and what happens in the brain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But let's be really clear. The brain is not the same as awareness. In the scientific world, I looked this up, and there are lots of articles about this that say consciousness is the great mystery. It's the thing that science can't measure. It's called, in scientific language, the hard problem of consciousness. I find that very entertaining, right? And isn't it a relief? Like, oh, there's something that we can't put a number and a name and a box around, and then if we're in America, we package it and sell it. Because don't we know, really, if we think about in our own lives, that the most important things in our life are always those things that we can't measure, that are beyond our ability to box in that way, right? Things like love, compassion, beauty, truth. How do you measure that? But what would our lives be like without any of that? Same quality, same flavor with consciousness. It is, if I switch metaphors from sky to water, it is the ocean we swim in. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And yet we can't quite get it. I say all this, and I feel sort of giddy. I'm like so happy that there's something that we can't get. It's going to always be elusive, right? It's always going to be outside the realm of what can be packaged and sold. So, in the first part of the what does it mean to be free talk, I really talked about this shift in relationship to content. And now I'm offering a different kind of paradigm. It's a more radical one, which is to begin to shift from content to awareness. And what does it mean to shift from content to awareness? The awareness is always here. Eugene does this little trick often on meditation retreats where he says to people, stop being aware. No, really, stop, stop it, stop. You can't do it, right? We're not in charge. Maybe that's what makes me so happy about it. Ah, something we're not in charge of, something we can't muck around in. We can't harm it, we can't help it because we are it. And as we begin to orient in this way, to make this sort of more radical shift in our thinking, we might say, in Einstein's language, we find an even greater slice of freedom. We step from the known into the unknown. We allow ourselves to enter a realm in which we can be surprised, in which we can be open always to what's unfolding rather than what can I get and what am I going to get away from. It's a complete reorientation. So I want to share a little bit about this from the uh, Zen master Suzuki Roshi. So many of you know I have a foot in two uh, teaching tracks, both Soto Zen and Insight Meditation. And Suzuki Roshi talks about this as big mind and small mind. And to equate, we would say the big mind is the sky-like mind, and the small mind is the thinky mind, the mind of the clouds. Or in his metaphor of it, he talks about the ocean and waves. And here's the really fabulous thing, which you'll hear. I'll read you what he says, which is that they aren't two things. He says, if your mind is related to something outside of itself, in other words, there's two things. There's me and there's it. There's me and what I'm aware of, content. If your mind is related to something outside of itself, that mind is small mind, a limited mind. If your mind is not related to anything else, there is no duality. There is no dualistic understanding in the activity of mind. You understand activity as just waves of your mind. Big mind experiences everything within itself. Do you understand the difference between the two minds? The mind which includes everything and the mind which is related to something. So this is pointing us toward a different kind of freedom. We can shift our relationship to our experience when we are in the mind that is related to something. And that is a powerful shift. And we can, as I'm beginning to point to here, begin to catch on to, oh, that's not the only thing happening. There is this big mind. The big mind is the all-inclusive mind, the no part left out mind, the mind in which we don't have to be constantly tinkering with our experience, grabbing after, pushing away, getting and getting away from. All of that falls away when we recognize or rest in this big mind, this all-inclusive mind. Why? Because in the all-inclusive mind, dogs bark, in the all-inclusive mind, everything's included, right? So I'll read you what he says. That everything is included in your mind, that the mind is like the ocean and waves arrive in the mind. But the waves are just the water, right? The thoughts are just the expression of big mind. Everything you see is an expression of big mind. Now we don't have to be so stuck in what we like and what we don't like. We can actually appreciate all of it. that everything is included within your mind is the essence of mind. To experience this is to have religious feeling. Even though waves arise, the essence of your mind is pure. It is just like clear water with a few waves. Actually, water always has waves. Waves are the practice of water. To speak of waves apart from water or water apart from waves is a delusion. Water and waves are one. So what happens here is that the activity stops being a problem. Not only do we not have to get away from, but we can begin to appreciate. Oh, this is what consciousness is kicking up right now. I may like it, I may not like it, but it's not some alien thing that I'm trying to shift. I'm not trying to get over small mind to get into big mind. This is still dualistic thinking, right? Big mind includes small mind. We don't have to be aggressive toward it. We don't have to fight with it. Big mind and small mind are one. When you understand your mind in this way, you have some security in your feeling. As your mind does not expect anything from outside, it is already filled. So that constant need to get and get away from goes quiet. This is indirect experience, one of the qualities of big mind, of sky-like mind, is that it's very quiet. It doesn't care. It doesn't care how many clouds there are, or how many birds come or don't come, or whether it's sunny or stormy. It holds all of it. This is big mind. A mind with waves is not a disturbed mind, but actually an amplified one. Whatever you experience is an expression of big mind. Now, you may notice you're not big mind. You may notice you're dualistic, you're thinky mind, having some objections. Wait, what? Or you may be confused, or you may be thinking, wait, this doesn't make any sense. If that's happening for you, you're right on track. This is taking us out of our usual way of thinking about things. Our usual way of thinking about things is dividing things up, making a this and a that, making a distinction. This is a way of speaking which is an invitation. It's not, you don't have to do anything because it's already here. But you can begin to invite yourself to remember to be the sky, to remember that you are the ocean, to remember that no matter how terrible or wonderful your thoughts may be, they're just expressions of something. And from that place, you will relate to your experience differently. It happens automatically. But it is a fundamental shift from, I talked about at the beginning, like believing your thoughts to being able to rest back and seeing thoughts as a kind of fantastical display. Look at that. Look what I think. Like that. Right? So, why is this important in the Saha world? This is not, I'm not speaking about this because there is, because I'm inviting you to escape from the world. This is a fundamental shift in orientation that allows us to be right in the middle of everything and to engage from a different place. Not just to choose not to be reactive, but to actually see with the eyes of everything is included, and to begin to notice what kind of response comes from that. So it takes a bit to get used to this, but it is a different way of talking about what our practice is about. There's a phrase that I like very much in the Zen tradition, which speaks to what the world looks like from here. And again, what the world looks like from here isn't, I'm no longer in my small mind. I am now abiding in my big mind, and I'm ignoring my small mind. No, it's a mind that includes all of it. From that place, the phrase that I love is, in all the world, there's no place to spit. This is the direct experience of beginning to soften from relating to the world from a place of tracking the clouds, trying to stop the waves, and instead relaxing back and remembering that you too are the sky, that you too are the ocean. And from here, you can respond to everything that happens inside and outside instead of from a place of control, trying to manage. You respond from a place of wholeness, of unity, of love, because it's all one thing. It doesn't mean there's not delusion. It doesn't mean there's not bad behavior. But that bad behavior is the result of being split off from this wholeness. Very painful. And when we're in pain, we behave badly. So then we begin to have compassion for the bad behavior in us and around us that we see, which isn't passivity. Please know that. It doesn't mean don't respond. It means respond from a radically different place. I'll leave you with an image, which is the both hand image, because at least for me, my dualistic mind is so programmed that it's really hard to get. No, I'm not saying you shouldn't be the clouds, you should be the sky. I'm saying yes, all of it. I'm inviting you and me and all of us to include the sky, to let the sky be part of the equation. Or if we switch metaphors again, we could use the ocean. And there's this great image that I use a lot when I find myself in the mind of separation, in the mind of forgetting, the bigness, the wholeness. So the image is of a person who is in the ocean, and their head is above the water, and the wind and the waves are chopping, and it's like the world. It's got its difficulties. It's chop and churn, and maybe some birds fly over and like poop on your head, and the sun is too hot, and then there comes and there's rain. So it's hard up here, right? But here's the thing that we remember, that connected to the head, there's a neck, and then there's a very, 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 very long body. That long body goes all the way to the bottom of the ocean. Same ocean. At the top, chop and churn. At the bottom of the ocean, it's quiet, it's dark, it's still. And we keep our feet down there in the dark, in the not knowing, in the unseen, in the unknowable at some level. And that allows us to respond to the chop and churn at the top in a very different way. The chop and churn won't go away, but who we understand ourselves to be and how we understand the ocean changes. And that changes everything. That is a vision of freedom. So we only have a few moments, but I'm going to give those of you who are watching your minds, like mine often does, go, what is she talking about? I remember so vividly when I first came into Zen practice, I had this really good, well trained, thinky mind, you know? And then I listened to what they were saying at the Zen Center, and I was like, what? None of it made any sense to me. But what happened was that even though it didn't make sense in my mind, and I had a lot of argument, a lot of debate going on, I felt something. It touched something. The part of me that knows that wholeness, the part of me that knows the sky, that knows the ocean, as me, as you, as all of us. Because what I'm pointing to isn't something you need to do or be or become. It's who you already are, but have forgotten, or have forgotten to look, to remember. And yeah, so let's just sit for a moment. You got a big dose of pointing instruction. So inviting you as we close to let go of trying to understand or make sense of, and just to notice what's here. Is there aliveness or stillness in the body? Is there a sense of curiosity or frustration or wonder? And remembering that our practice is learning to be with all of it, that everything is included. And as we bring our evening of talking about freedom to a close, we want to offer any goodness, any benefit, any merit that may have come from our gathering together in words and in silence, and offering our sincere aspiration for each of us and all of us and all beings everywhere to be free from suffering, and to offer our sincere aspiration that we, together with all beings, will find a slice of freedom from which we too can respond to the cries of the world. By the power and truth of our practice, may all beings everywhere be happy and peaceful. May all beings be safe, free from inner and outer harm. And may we, together with all beings, awaken to the truth of who and what we really are, so that we too can be free.